Hi, Mohit. I'm going to start with you because you have been one of my clients and I've worked with Chaayos. So, my first question for you is around 7-10 years back, there was a buzz around the bots and RPA, and most of the organizations were automating their processes using RPA tools and building bots. Now again industry is moving from this rule based automation to a logical based automation using agentic AI. How do you see this transformation affecting your organization and industry at the large?
So, see, 5 to 7 years back when we were doing the RPA part, the workflows were very stringent, right? And if you have to bring in a new change in the system or augment the workflow, it had to go through a process of building out, then testing it out, and then finally rolling it out. And the challenging part was the adoption part of it, right? And all of it needed the entire org energy to go in to augment that workflow, be it a back office operations work or a frontline job or some process within the departments. Now, if you look at how the processes were structured, is that you define a workflow and then you train people around it to follow that, and then the thing that one organization monitors is that whether the adherence is there to that flow or not. Right now, the rigidness is something that is now going away because as you're evolving, new things are coming up, and you want these workflows to be flexible. You want them to be changed, at an unimaginable speed. And the last part, which is adoption, is something which comes very naturally to people. So that shift is happening in this agentic AI world. And it is very important for us to understand that we have, for good 30-40 years, have been living in that world of workflows where a software is built, a workflow is defined, and then you build your life around or your business around that workflow. This shift is happening to, there is an end outcome that you need to achieve. There is certain guardrails that are defined to achieve that end outcome. And now people on the fly are either defining those workflows or changing those workflows to achieve the final outcome. So that shift is bringing in a lot of efficiency, and that's where the whole agentic AI shift is happening. I can start to give examples also, but yeah, this is how I think is the transformation happening. Yeah.
Thanks. And Siddharth, what's your view? You bring in an OEM view where you have been working with a lot of customers. What's your view on the same?
Yeah. So at Salesforce, if you look at it, a number of customers globally have trusted us to be the front office of the enterprise, right? And that's what made us the leader in the market as well, because we helped customers build their sales, service, marketing, commerce, all of these operations, which is there, right? But the focus, as Mohit also said, was always task driven and not really outcome driven, right? So when people thought of a process, they said step 1, 2, 3, 4. And, like I work a lot in retail consumer goods. So when you think about like a return process, so they thought these are the steps for, returning a particular order. But now if you look at it, the market is so dynamic. There are newer channels which are evolving, right? So customers are ordering offline, online, they are moving across channels. Information is also not structured anymore, right? So tasks and workflows worked well when even information was structured. So now even data is coming in a lot of unstructured fashion. So I think intelligence which really lied outside, so somebody thought of a process and then they defined it. Now I think it's changing to intelligence being within the system itself, right? So where a workflow itself is able to be adaptive, right? So if it's a loyal customer, probably to maintain my CSAT, I would run the process differently, right? Probably I will do an instant refund. I won't wait for the product to come back, right? Or I want the system to be adaptive that, okay, hey, if picking up an order back from the customer is actually cost prohibitive because I probably can't sell it, so I'm actually going to lose money, I might not even pick it up, right? So you can and you can't define all of these patterns, right? These are patterns which emerge. These are patterns which, traditionally people analyze data, it took them weeks to do that, and then they identified the pattern. Now the system is able to do and implement it on the fly, right? So I think really people now need to focus more on outcomes, that my outcome is, better customer experiences, better customer, CSATs. My outcome needs to be, more cross sell, upsell, and let the system figure out, what's the right pattern in order to achieve that, right? So you still need the underlying workflow layer, right? Because the system needs to execute something. So none of that is going away. It's just that intelligence and pattern recognition is now forming part of the workflow itself.
Very interesting. So, uh, just to further dwell onto this, when you talked about these transformations and some of the outcome-based initiatives, what are the low-hanging fruits that you see within organizations with respect to processes where these agentic AI systems can be enabled, and what are the processes where the needle should be on the experimentation and where it should be on the necessity?
So see, some of the places where you need humans, you rely heavily on humans in a business like ours is the whole observing part of it. Whether somebody's there who's observing that particular work is happening as per expectation or not, is has been has been very people dependent, right? And you put people in place, just layers and layers on top of it, just to ensure that what you have defined is working or not. This is a very low hanging fruit which needs to be killed. The observability has to be built as part of the workflow. There need not be any human intervention required, and the system is capable of telling you, these are my top 5 concerns, and these are my top 5 things that have worked for me, and these are the action items that need to be taken to get there. So now this cannot happen without you collecting enough information for you to take these calls, right? So the low hanging fruit is make your observability more automated, and which is just the data collection part, and then put agents on top of it which will give you clear cut actionables to be solved for. So that's a low hanging fruit, and you can start with any one function. For instance, you can start with your let's say if you are doing a dispatch also of products from a warehouse, start it from there as to, I need to collect all information that is available to me to ensure that the dispatch has happened. And once that has happened, the system is able to tell me that these are the 5 things that have happened correct today, and these are the 5 things that did not work. Now, all of a sudden, you have removed that whole supervisory layer on top of it. The system has become more efficient. It has become more deterministic, and it brought in another level of I would say scrutiny that you can do, or further questioning that you can do as to why a particular thing is not working. So that layer of supervision has to be killed, and I think it can be killed by automating a lot of data collection automation, as well as a lot of agentic AI development happening around that data.
And any process where you see that agentic AI, especially in your organization, is getting experimented, it's not been deployed yet? If you can share that.
Yes, I can give you some idea. So let's say if you walk into a Chaayos cafe, the first thing that you do is, because you're part of a loyalty program, you will put in your number. And then we have a standard SOP of order taking, which is, people would say, welcome to Chaayos, and then they will ask you, how is your day? And then they'll ask you, would you like to repeat your last order? Now, these are some of the conversations which are more mechanical in nature, right? The empathy part is missing. Now, imagine you being a customer, you have walked into a cafe, which is your regular cafe, but you went to a cafe before where you had a bad experience, and you even reached out to us saying that I had a bad experience. Now, somebody in the system can come back and say, I need to build my this rating part as part of this workflow, and ask question to the customer that you had a bad experience last time. What happened? Or can I fix this for you? But see, these are again workflows where you're augmenting those workflows. But imagine the scenarios for each and every customer would be different. Their journeys would be different. Now, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to take up the journey of the customer, and waiting for the customer to come into the cafe and then have clear-cut couple of action items defined for the team saying that, these are the 2 actions that you have to take, and these are very specific customer by customer. So now moving away from, again, a workflow kind of a system to making it more, the experience more connected to the customer, bringing in that empathy part also into place is what, something that we are experimenting with. And that's something that we have
Very
started
interesting.
applying.
Thanks. Siddharth, what's your view on some of these low-hanging fruits with respect to processes where agentic AI can be implemented?
So I think it obviously varies by industry, right? Because I think the operational model and the outcomes which each industry chases is different. What we essentially, what we are essentially seeing is, wherever customers have their basic processes set up, the base, at least the workflow technology and the data foundations are in place, right? Um, and these are high scale, high volume operations, right? So for example, typically if you pick up customer service, right, and I think that would be true for any company out there. Why customer service was one of the first ones, which most companies are experimenting with autonomous agents, because your traditional bots were always menu driven. You always had to design a decision tree for understanding intent, then you take that intent into what actions, right? And that's not how customer conversations happen, right? Customer conversations can start at point A, go to point B, then it then customer starts talking in different languages also sometimes in the same conversation, and it took a lot of people, and traditional RPA or bot automation could not do that, right? So and how models have evolved over the last, at least I would especially say in the last few months, and especially with voice, right? I think customer service is a big play area, because most companies out there, are using a service CRM. They have the customer data, they have all the past interactions, they know what's the typical sentiment of a customer basis their past purchase history, and it actually makes the job much more easier for companies like Salesforce, because all what we have to do is just enable that agent in their existing flow of work, right? So whether it is summarizing a case for them, or even we'll give you our own example, because at Salesforce we were actually customer zero. So before we actually rolled out anything to the customer, we started using agents internally first. So a number of our L1 support use cases are now autonomously driven. Obviously, we have learned along the way. It's still a fine balance of deterministic and probabilistic, but I think service is one example, and I think the mid office layer, which Mohit also spoke about, right? So you have big large teams whose job is, like, we work with a number of financial services companies. I don't need a person going through you know loan documents, or insurance policies, right? That is something which probably LLMs can do a much fantastic job. So with the same amount of people, I can probably process more loans, process more policies, probably have straight through processing. So I think some mid office operations like these, where a lot of document processing used to be done by people, and customer services is one big aspect. Uh, and I think a lot of that will lead to better output from existing teams, right? So obviously we see that scare that, okay, people, are gonna, I'll need less people, but I think it's also from a perspective that as your as your demand is rising, you'll probably be able to do more, much more with existing people as well.
So Mohit, I have a question for you. You have deployed a lot of agentic AI systems within your organization, but a recent study conducted by one of the IT companies claims that 7 out of 10 companies are implementing agentic AI, but only one of them succeed in getting the ROI that was promised. Where do you think that the other 9 went wrong? Was it over promising the ROI, or was it more to do with identifying a process that couldn't scale up to the organization level? And what's your opinion?
See, from my experience of building agents, probably I would have also thrown out 3 out of 10. Uh, And one of the reasons, the core reason that came out to be is, see, agentic world is a non-deterministic world, right? This whole agentic AI world is a non-deterministic world. And our battle is to basically make it more deterministic. People have a cold feet when they are at 90% of the work completion and they find out that the non-deterministic side is heavier than the deterministic side. So they take a call that let's not go ahead and build it. So, and most of it fails at the time of not defining what is the outcome you want to get from there. Because while you're building it, people start to add on, acha, ye ho sakta hai, to let's do more. Let's add more things. Can this do this? So we have already, while in the build stage itself, we have deviated from our end outcome that we need to achieve, and we have set a new goalpost. And in the intent of reaching that new goalpost is where we lose that, where that whole cold feet happens, that, after the 90% is built, when the demo is happening or when we are actually putting out there in front of the customers, you say, this is not working because it is giving me random results. So the focus should have been fix the goalpost, define the outcome properly, put your guardrails in place, put your checks in place, and then make sure that you are doing the right implementation. And if the implementation is not happening, it is me and not the agent which is at fault. So it was the first 5 agents that we built, 3 of them were thrown out, but after that, the next 5 agents that we have built, none of them have been thrown out because we changed this way of working. So I think that particular part of being it's non-deterministic nature, and then that cold feet of what if I put it in front of the customer, what is the reputational risk I'm at, or what is the financial risk that I'm at, are some of the challenges that come in later when you're actually seeing the implementation happening, is where people say, let's back it out, back out from it and move forward. So I think that those, in my experience, those could have been some of the reasons of people pulling out.
Yep. I just want to add to that. See, I would also look at it from a lens that while 7 out of 10 were thrown out, but there were 10 good experiments which probably happened, right? And I think a lot of 2025 was about that, right? Let me enable my people, let me see what the capability is, let me see what is the kind of outcome it can actually give me, right? So I wouldn't really treat that as such a bad thing. I think because a lot of it was experimentation, and I think it's good to experiment, right? We need to be a bit more risk averse and see what is the potential out there. One, I think, challenge which I see is that even experimentation sometimes, when it's done from a POC perspective, right? People are just testing out capability, right? They're not really testing out outcomes which are there. So, and I think that's what Mohit said, that needs to change. You're no longer testing out capability to see how it works. You need to figure out, is it gonna give me the outcome, and how much it's gonna cost me, because your CFO is gonna ask you that question, right? And then also someone needs to take that accountability, because please don't blame the agent that if it gave the wrong answer or it failed. The accountability needs to lie with someone, right? It's very easy to say, hey, the agent failed, so let's blame them. So clear cut accountability model that, okay, it's department A which owns the responsibility, which means that whoever is defining that process or AI first process needs to be very clear on day one that this is the percentage of acceptable risk I'm allowing to take. Okay, these are the activities which I'm okay with autonomous agent taking, because it's a fair acceptable risk which is there, right? So for example, in our case, over time we learned that there were certain type of cases where an agent was probably not giving the right answer, so we pulled it back to a deterministic approach which is there, and let all the certain L1 cases let the agent handle, right? So that's what I would say, that don't, at least in 2026, with most customers, the expectation is clear. Let's focus on outcome. The ROI needs to be defined on day one itself, and someone needs to take accountability. And it's a change management process, right? So the accountability needs to be defined, and I think we'll probably have more successes.
Thank you both for coming here and sharing your views on adoption of AI. And like you mentioned, the adoption start with acceptance, right? And transformation has to be outcome based, and this outcome has to be deterministic outcome. You have to move from probabilistic outcomes to deterministic outcome. Thank you for sharing that. With this, we'll end the session. Thanks.